restriction. See the new function on Zoom. She announces that they're recording. You have to accept that you are okay being recorded now. There's a whole waiver process to this thing. If you're not comfortable being recorded, you got to click no. Yeah, so as I was saying, I'm sure all of you have seen Premier Kenny's announcements and his stage to reopen. It's pretty aggressive. With that, we're going to talk through some of what that actually means, because we've gotten some clarity as per usual. They make an announcement, we get some clarity afterwards. So I'm here to provide some of that clarity to you guys. And obviously Beth is going to continue to do a great job in sharing some of that information as a part of our communication strategy. So go ahead, Beth, let's go through the next slide. So this call is really about just giving you guys another update. And we're close. I mean, in track, we can see the finish line. So that's super exciting. And then Beth and Nick will take you through some of the not-for-profit stuff from a club perspective. So association update. We are currently in stage 1. So we're back to the 10 people outside and distanced and masked and those things. But if you followed yesterday, the cases were down, the hospitalizations were down, and you know, we are already at the markers for stage 2 and potentially even stage 3 from what they laid out. So 2 weeks from today, we'll see, hopefully, if nothing regresses, a move to stage 2 and so on. So the key piece to understand as we go through this is their announcement in sport. You guys will have seen this. I know everyone highlighted this, is unrestricted return to sport for all outdoor and indoor. And so what they did clarify on that front for us after the fact is that is meant to be around gameplay. So if you think of our sport, that means we don't have to distance between lanes. You can run in every lane. We can return to true sport participation and competition, but there's still going to be some, and it's moves from guidelines being mandated to guidelines being suggested. So around gameplay, there's still going to be some recommendations about distancing, number of people around a group, those types of things. So the getting to the gameplay stuff, they're still going to have some guidelines, and we're still going to have some guidelines about, you know, making sure that we're still a little bit cautious. So gameplay as it is intended is to kind of ramp back up to normal, but you know, spectators, sanitization for some sports, it really doesn't apply to us, as we learned throughout this whole thing last year, is that sanitization that we were really concerned about at the beginning isn't such a concern anymore. Right? There's been several studies about how the virus lives on substances and is transmitted. And so some of those things that we thought were a big concern last year with lack of science and knowledge, and now that we've learned over the year that, okay, it's not so bad, we don't have to take those precautions. So Athletics Canada, myself, Paul Oslin from Ontario, Alana, and then Dr. Patty McCluskey, Matt Gentes, we're reconnecting on some of the athletics guidelines, and we're going to have some of those rewritten and updated here probably within the next 2 weeks, which will align with stage 2. And it really is about guidelines around, okay, sport is back to actual activity, normal, but there's some guidelines around the sport, congregation in areas, fans, spectators, all of those things will be revisited. So if we think of CalTAF as an example in the meet, Nick is working extremely hard on behalf of the CalTAF team, putting that meet together and trying to get these answers. You know, they've kind of said, well, we could be in stage 2 by then and you guys will be fine, but we need better clarification well in advance of waiting till the Friday or Thursday. So Nick is on board with getting that answer for us, but there will be some additional guidance that we will release to you guys. So again, just wanted to give you some clarity on what gameplay means for them. All right, and then as we go to the next slide, I kind of covered this already, but AHS doesn't want to get inundated with requests. So as they've done probably over the last several months now, is they're asking the PSOs, the higher ups, to say, communicate what you need, we'll get back to you efficiently, and we'll get you the answers you need to disseminate out to your membership. So Nick's been doing, like I said, Nick's been doing a great job in communicating with HS and really trying to get answers for you guys that we then disseminate out through either the newsletter, social media, or this format. So again, hang in there, guys. You guys are doing an amazing job. I think from a sport perspective, we were in the top 3 in as far as number of lack of cases, I think is a better way to put it. Lack of cases and lack of transmission of cases throughout the last year. The individual sports did an exceptional job of that. Gymnastics, the skating group, the swimming group was unreal, but you know, they live in an environment where the virus gets killed once they go in the pool. So, so maybe that's some of the benefit there. But we've done a great job, and I just want to commend you guys for doing such an excellent job. And we're at the finish line, so hang in there a couple more weeks as we roll through this this rollout. You can do some things again, and we're excited to get out there. The heat certainly does help keep people in a more positive frame of mind. So do a great job for the next 2 weeks, and maybe sooner, fingers crossed. They might even move a little quicker through this process. So this government has proven to be unpredictable. That's probably the best way to put it. But super exciting. So I just want to open it up for questions just on the clarity of what you guys read in the guidelines versus the interpretation we do get from conversations with the sports sector.
And you're welcome to put questions in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask them. Just to be very clear, I think James mentioned it. We'll go back here, but this is where we're at right now, is up to 10 people distanced. So if there are any questions, we'll pause for that.
James, do you think then that we don't have to be sanitizing the equipment in the same way?
Yeah, I really think that, like, the learning we had over the year throughout this process was, there was really concern. I mean, even go back to when we were talking about sand and the concern of sand flying up and getting into somebody's mouth or into their nasal cavity, and that got dismissed. And then they started to look at surface and how the virus is transmitted on surface. And you know, people went from wiping their groceries down at the beginning to not doing any of that anymore. So it just was the learning over the duration that, as far as things go outdoor, there was a report that was published 2 weeks back that less than 10% of the global transmissions of COVID occurred outside. And so when we think of our sport being naturally spaced out, individualistic, in an outdoor environment, the sanitization of things, you know, we don't need to be wiping down starting blocks and hurdles and those types of things. I think that's all. It's now at the point of redundancy where we're going to visit that conversation with Dr. Patty here next week with the AC work group that we're on, just to get confirmation. But at this, I can see that being removed from the guidance as far as the sanitization of things, and even shared implements and things like that. You know, I would say we want to probably wipe them down between throws if somebody's using the same implement, but it's not to the point where, you know, the person needs to go put on hand sanitizer and somebody's wiping it down. And I mean, it's overkill based on what we now know. So I think that we get back to, you know, that's their definition of return to gameplay. Is basketball was having to wipe down balls and you know, all these common shared surfaces, and I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. But we're just going to wait on getting some confirmation on it. Thanks, Paula.
James, quick question.
Yeah, Sam.
In the meantime, then we should just maintain the status quo, like wipe it down, spray it down, but just sort of knowing that probably next week kind of thing when you guys let us know that we don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, 100%. So that's what I mean by just maintain the course that we've been on for the next 2 weeks. but the finish line is there. So if we don't change anything right now, that's the best practice. But we also know the answers are coming. We just don't have the answers as of today as to what that looks like specifically. But exactly what you said, Sam. Let's just maintain what we currently have been doing. Keep taking those precautions, because the last thing we want to see is, a Calgary stampede happens and all of a sudden we see our cases go back up to 1,500 and then everything goes backwards again. And from the sport perspective, we're all super excited and we want to get back, but we don't want to be a part of that either, right? So we want to still be a little bit cautious and make sure that we're responsible in how we behave. And I commend everyone in our membership about doing such a great job. So let's just carry it through for another 2 weeks.
So James, with the saying a term, so the groups of 10, so they're still expected to have the 2 meter spacing. Is there clarification on what's the spacing appropriate for when they're running, and when do they have to wear masks and when do they not have to?
Yeah. During any kind of competition or heavy training, definitely no mask, definitely not, especially outside. And all I think at this point, masking is for the coach and kind of the external of the group. But within the training group, if you're training a distance group and a couple of people are running together, it has been proven that it's extremely hard for anyone to actually pass the virus from one to the other. But for the next 2 weeks, let's maintain that distancing that we've been accustomed to. So let's just see that little bit through. And then I suspect that by the end of next week, I suspect we'll probably see that all be gone. And you guys will be able to have a distance group jockeying for position and bumping with each other again and doing those things on the track. And then if you're not, and you're not in that competitive environment, the spacing isn't so crucial anymore. But we've got 2 weeks. Well, not even. It's 13 more days. Thanks, Doug.
Is this a good time? I had a couple of questions from my coaches specifically to do with CalTAF. Could I ask those now?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
I may not answer, but Paula might.
Perfect. Yay, Paula. Okay. So it says that the warm-ups would take place on the soccer fields, and she was wondering if there'll still be usual warm-up time before field events for athletes to do practice jumps.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we're just working all of that stuff out at the right now. We actually have a meeting tomorrow just to figure that out. But under the conditions that we have now, or the restrictions that we have now, all the warm-ups will be done in 2 different soccer fields, and the athletes will have assigned times to come into those into the warm-up area and then be escorted to their event. So once we can figure out which athletes are going to be in the meet and get the performance list done, then we will be assigning each athlete times. In terms of jumps and throws, those athletes again will warm up in the soccer field and will be brought to the jump or the throw. But the warm-up throws then are going to be minimal. So 10 or 15 minutes, there's only 8 in a flight. And so it'll be more like nationals where you get 1 or 2 warm-up throws and then you'll get started.
Okay. And this might be another question that you'll answer tomorrow, but for the 800 meter, just wondering if there's changes to whether they're staying in their own lanes or like how that's going to work with the 800 meter.
At this point, we were going to run an 800 meter the regular way, but James, you have a comment about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'll maybe encapsulate the whole event with a comment that we're proceeding under what Paula and Christine put together from perspective of restricted, but we may be completely unrestricted by that point. So it's a little bit difficult for them to kind of understand which way we go here. And we're trying to get an answer from AHS. Nick is hopefully, fingers crossed, we even get something back from them today. just in regards to what we can and cannot do, because their comment to us is, well, by then we'll be in stage 2, so you can do these things. And we're going, we need to know today what we can do and work backwards from that versus waiting for you to tell us if you're in stage 2 or not. So I think for everyone on the call, the best thing to do is plan to go there. Paula and the group will come out with some information for you guys again tomorrow that we'll get communicated out. But the idea being that at this point we have to operate it somewhat restricted, but it may end up getting changed to less restricted. I don't see it becoming more restricted. We're operating from a more restriction perspective and opening up versus a less restricted perspective closing down.
And I think too, just to elaborate as well, James, is just as a CalTEF group, we're pretty cautious. And because this is sort of the first bigger meet of the COVID life, that we are, even if things are, really unrestricted, that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll go that way. We certainly want to have more people on the track than we can right now, and we're hoping, to ease up there. But I mean, someone asked me this morning if there was going to be spectators, and at this point, there's not going to be. And sort of even if it opens up, we probably won't have spectators and that kind of thing. But we're getting closer to an answer every day, and I just wanted really to thank Nick. He's been working really hard to get the exemption and move it forward.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question from parents, was whether they could, or whether they have to stay in the hotel. And the only other question I had was regarding, we're not using Tracky to sign up. Is there somebody that is checking AA numbers?
No. So on our website, there is a meet entry form. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and you must include the AA numbers. The reason why we didn't do Tracky was just because there was some ambiguity about the refunds and what that meant. So for instance, so you're entering the meet. I'm just going to use this as an example. So let's say we have one heat of U18 800s. We are going to take the top seed times, and those people will be in the 800, but we will have, 2 or 3 heats of U18 800s try and apply to get into the meet. What we didn't want is everybody goes in, everybody pays to Tracky, and then we're refunding that and then having to pay some of the transaction fees. So yes, we'll be on Saturday. The entries close on the 4th. On the Saturday, we'll be going through all the performance lists and then trying to figure out the heats, etc. And then the people that didn't get into this meet have 2 options. They can either be refunded fully, or they can transfer their entry into the meet that we're having on the 24th weekend of 24th, is it, Sam? I'm right. Weekend in July.
Okay, so when will we know which kids made it in and which kids didn't?
We have our meeting Saturday at 3, and we'll just stay there until we get it done. And then probably all of those things will be posted either Saturday night, depending how long that takes us, or Sunday morning. It's a little bit difficult because we haven't had meets. So to ask people for seed times, especially when some of the kids have moved up age groups or that kind of thing, it's going to be a bit tricky. So I'm just telling everybody we're going to just do the best we can, but it is going to take some time to go through.
Okay, well, I really appreciate all the work you guys are doing, Paula. Thank you so much.
We're so excited to have this meet. I can't even tell you. It just feels more like normal, whatever that is.
Yeah, no, I think that, we're certainly seeing it from the Athletics Alberta registration side, where we're seeing our numbers rebound nicely. So you can see the community starting to get that excitement as well, and saying, hey, I'm going to get my membership active again because it looks like we're going to have some fun this summer. So that's really encouraging, and I couldn't think of a better meet to have our first one. The organizing team is outstanding, and so I'm super excited. We're going to be out there in full force, and from a fan perspective, I can even speak to Christine's got some strategies around where parents can sit up on the hills and the berms and stuff and still watch from a distance. So we're trying everything possible to give people opportunity to be involved in the meet in one way or the other.
And we are trying to live stream as well. We're just sort of hitting some roadblocks there with the extra people and equipment that are involved, but we should have that figured out by the end of the week.
Awesome. Okay, I know we've got some other stuff to present and get through, so maybe we'll just, any last questions before we move forward into the next part of the presentation? All right, over to you, Nick and Beth. Thanks, guys.
Okay, hello, everybody, and thanks for showing up again. Speaking of getting back to normal, I just sent an email to all of the people that are listed as club admins on Tracky, just letting you know that we're going ahead with our R series in Edmonton this Saturday. So it's a relay 5K total. You can do 1K, you can do 3K, you can do all 5K, but it's a great chance to get out and get active again. And we're all going to be there and possibly do a cheerleading routine, which James is just being notified about this second. So anyway, I also just want to say,
Surprise.
it's a surprise. I just want to say a couple things before I get started. Just talking about this wonderful community that we have and all the work that we've been doing as staff this past season, you know, in the winter and spring here. One of the big projects that I undertook was 3 websites, the biggest being the Athletics Alberta. And I just wanted to say special thanks to Jan for being so helpful with his editing and making suggestions. And it's such a community effort here. I can't even begin to tell you. So for everybody that sent me little things saying, hey, this, you know, link didn't work or whatever, thank you for having my back, and special thanks to Jan for especially having my back. So our backs. Here we go. We're talking about nonprofit governance today a little bit because most of you are nonprofits already, but the new club policy, or the current club policy, is asking that all of our clubs become nonprofits. And one of the things I do as my side hustle is nonprofit consulting. So if you have any questions along the way with the things that you're doing, I'm happy to help you with those, you know, provide you with some insight and answers. So some of the reasons why, you know, we've been asked, well, why do we have to become a nonprofit, or why should we be a nonprofit? And really, if I was going to sum it up in 2 words, it would be, you know, money and liability. So you receive money in club fees, you receive, you know, money from us when we have the opportunity to share, whether it be the, you know, heritage funding, COVID related funding, whatever. And so the fiscal responsibility that comes with managing those funds, whether it be team fees, et cetera, is really important to have that in hand. One of the big reasons to become a nonprofit, so that you have all of the administrative infrastructure to manage that and to be responsible. Also, liability. You know, when you have money and you're responsible for it, then you become liable for it. When you're working with kids of, you know, from age 10 up and beyond, you're responsible. So there's you know, fiduciary responsibility, and then there's that legal moral responsibility, which all comes under, you know, the umbrella of creating this nonprofit. So you know, you'll read different things that say you should start with your board of directors, or you should start with your mission, or you should start just testing out a name. To me, I think the biggest thing that you need as a nonprofit is a strong board of directors. You all want to be aligned and have the exact same outcome in mind. For us here, it's, you know, we're athlete service first. We want to make sure that our members, whoever you are being serviced to the best of our abilities. So when you're thinking about your board members, you want to think about their individual capacity. This is something else that you really want to consider, is because some people like to be on several boards, and then they aren't really great on any of the boards, or they have 8 children and they just don't have the time and energy. So what are those board members able to bring in terms of capacity? Also know-how. we love to diversify. We're getting more diversified in our board right now with people who aren't necessarily embedded in the sport, but who have the kind of know-how that we need as an organization that is provincial wide. You'll want to get really good effective bylaws. We have our own that, you know, Nick's going to be putting some links in the chat as well if you wanted to refer to ours, but absolutely there's all kinds of templates online. Even Athletics Canada has bylaws that you may want to review, but those are the essentially guiding laws, if you will, that your nonprofit will you know, move through the business through by. Your policies are different. Those are operational, but your bylaws are very much upper level things that you want to keep in mind. So this link is how to incorporate your society. If you haven't already done that, you'll want to take a hand at do that. Some of the things specific to, and we'll talk, I'll share in a couple of slides, a lot of resources that will actually help you move through how to create your nonprofit, but a couple of things that are very club specific that we want to touch on in terms of best practices. There are things that you know, it's always great to have our coaches on our board of directors, but you want to try and keep them out of those really executive level you know, money decision making roles. Directors at large, fantastic. Great to have coaches on board. Great to have athletes, you know, as athletes, as advisors, or as directors at large. But try and keep your president, your vice president, your treasurer, your secretary, those executive roles to people who maybe wouldn't have a conflict of interest, depending on the you know, the decisions that you're going to make. Again, you want to diversify and stagger that board as much as you can so that you don't age out. And this is something I've heard some of our club admins saying, you know, they're scrambling to find board members sometimes because the kids have aged out. So the parents who are on the board have gone with them. So try and diversify as much as possible. Of course, keep your proper minutes, documentation. It's not good enough to say, oh yeah, let's say we had a meeting and write that down. You actually really should have those meetings. And again, keep your financial records properly. We, in the club policy, if there's ever some kind of, you know, complaint that comes up, we have made it such that we can, in the club policy, that we can request your financials. And that's, again, just to make sure, because we're the governing body, that everything is being maintained to the, you know, with fiduciary responsibility. Here's some links, and Nick is going to put them in the chat. So the Matart organization has incredible, they're a funding agency, first of all, but they have incredible board development information, workshops, workbooks, all kinds of stuff that you'll want to take a look at for, you know, for, let's say you're setting up policies around you know, the terms of your board of directors, or how you handle petty cash, or all of these different things. The Matart organization has tons of information. ECVO is the Edmonton Chamber of Voluntary Organizations, and there's, wherever you go across the province, there will be voluntary organizations that can help you. Volunteer Alberta is another one that always offers resources and has stuff online on their website. The government of Alberta offers a board development workshop. Those sort of sell out very quickly. They're a very good price, and it's usually a day long or 2 half days, and you get all kinds of information. CharityVillage.com is another nonprofit resource agency. They, of course, have jobs and those kinds of things, but they have tons of online learning, typically free. So those are lots of resources that you can and Nick, as I say, is putting those so you can link off in the chat if you're still interested. There's still 22 of you listening, so you must be doing something right. Okay, let me move this down. Oh yeah, okay, so best practice for our clubs, just again, we encourage all of your board members to register as associates for a few different reasons. Right now, our A clubs have directors in liability that we're helping to subsidize. That's insurance. We're helping to subsidize for this year. And so to be part of that directors and liabilities insurance, which all of you should have, by the way, you need to be an associate and you need to be listed as such. It's also really good because it's a great way to keep track of, in my opinion, who's involved in your organization if you have them all listed as associates. Anybody that's related and works with your club, that's associated with your club, should have a criminal record check. For obvious reasons. One, if they're making decisions around money, and if they have anything to do with the athletes, they should absolutely have a CRC. We're going to be revamping our portal in the coming probably by September. And so we'll have one port of call, if you will, to access the criminal record checks. But for now, if there's people who aren't, who don't have a CRC in your club, by all means, send me an email with their name and their email address, and I will send them an invitation to our portal. It's $25 through the portal, and it's right quick. Communications processes. So this is something we see here time and again. It would be so wonderful and definitely a best practice if our clubs put into practice a communications process. So what we find often is either the coaches know a lot about something or the club admins know about something, but the two often don't connect. So whether it be a weekly email that goes and circulates to everybody, including board members, or whether it be, you know, Slack, there's all kinds of online tools and apps that can be used for communications, but it really makes things so much easier on everyone involved, especially your club, if you have a great communications process. And if you need any help brainstorming that or troubleshooting that, I'm your human. Okay, so another thing we want to do is talk about the safe sport training. Anybody associated with your club should have this. And I'm just gonna see Nick put the link in the chat, and I'm gonna see if I can open it up here. Can you see my screen? Can everybody see my screen? Did that work? Nick, did that work? I'm showing the screen that
yes,
it works.
that
Okay,
works.
cool, great. So these are all the people that should have safe sport. So if you just go down the list here, I'm 100% sure there are people related to your organizations and your clubs that should be taking safe sport that haven't. Volunteers, you name it. You know, your administration, your finance, absolutely everybody. So we strongly encourage that. Okay, moving back over here. So that was just, I mean, look at us done already. That was just a really brief overview. I'll be putting a lot of these sort of tips and tricks and recommendations in the club best practices sort of reference document that I'm creating. But if you have any questions at this time, I'm happy to answer them. And Nick and James are still on the call, so we are happy to answer them. If you have any questions about your nonprofit beings that you are as clubs.
Just want to add quickly that you can download the chat. So if you want those links, if you go to the chat, there's 3 dots on the right, you should be able to download it all.
Anybody have any questions? Great. Not a one. Fantastic.
Indication that you did a pretty thorough job, Beth.
That was just the beginning.
Excellent.
So I guess I have one question. This is Jason from Red Deer. Is the transition year that we're having this year still in play, that we're still transitioning to all these rules over this year?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Still transitioning. Next year, we're hoping everybody's sort of come up in alignment. And just so, I'm not sure if it's been made clear often enough, but like we're just sort of bringing ourselves up to other branches across the country. This isn't, you know, new or unheard of elsewhere in the country. So that's why we're giving everybody, you know, the year to bring things into alignment. Any other questions? Oh, for the Edmonton clubs, we have an excellent accountant interested in board work, perhaps a treasurer. Oh, look at that. Robin's got somebody for you. What are the percentage of clubs in Alberta that are already nonprofits? I don't know, Carmen, but thanks for the question. No idea.
Most of them should be.
They should be.
Well,
Some are working on it. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were going to get any gaming funding, whether it was from bingo or from casino, you have to be. So most of them should be, if not all of them, but that's just some of the checks and administrative balances we're putting in place as a part of club policies to make sure everyone's structured right so that you can actually maximize all of the opportunities out there.
That's another thing. I mean, that's a whole other workshop in itself, you know, funding and grants and opportunities for nonprofits. There's oodles out there, especially related to COVID relief and rebooting. And yeah, there's lots out there. So if you're interested, I can send you to a couple of places to find lots of information on grants. Any other questions? Something in the chat. Paula, you're interested in the grants? Excellent. I don't know, is there, oh, somebody else in the chat? No, that's a reaction. Anything else, folks? Hopefully by the, yes, yeah, and 100% Carmen, we know there's a couple of clubs that are working on things, but most of our clubs are definitely nonprofits already, as James mentioned. Well, if there's no other questions, you know how to find me. I have, I don't know, 7 aliases for emails, so just track me down. And Nick, of course, is always available, and James, so we're around and happy to help. So I guess we can wrap it up. Hey, James.
Yep. Thanks everyone for attending. And as you've been aware, we're a lot more communicative. So you're going to see a lot more information coming out. And again, hang in there, folks. It's hopefully 13 days to the countdown of back to actual sport play. And then we'll just have a few additional guidances, you know, around the surrounding socialization around sport. But again, commend everyone. Excellent job getting through this mess, and looking forward to a really exciting summer. So take care, everyone. We'll talk again soon.